Welcome, history enthusiasts. Today we drift into the harrowing world of the First World War and ask the question, could you survive as a German soldier in WWI? From the mud-filled trenches to the chaos of artillery fire, gas attacks and the bonds of camaraderie, we'll explore the trials, fears and resilience of soldiers on the Western Front. If you enjoy this journey through history, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more immersive videos that bring the past to life. Your support helps us keep uncovering the stories that shaped our world. Imagine stepping into the muddy, rat-infested trenches of northern France in 1916. The air is thick with the smell of decay, gunpowder and fear. You are a German soldier, barely 18 years old, newly conscripted, full of the youthful energy that seemed so important before the realities of war began to sink in. You were told stories of honor, bravery and glory, told that you would be defending your homeland with courage, that the discipline and training instilled in you would carry you through. Yet, as you trudged through the churned earth and mud, with water pooling in your boots and frost biting at your fingertips, you quickly realized that no training could truly prepare anyone for what awaited on the Western Front. The trenches stretch endlessly in both directions, a network of mud, wood, sandbags and barbed wire. They are a world unto themselves, a mixture of human ingenuity and human suffering, where daily existence is measured not just by survival, but by the mental and emotional endurance of each man within them. The German army in 1914 was one of the most disciplined and efficient fighting forces in the world. It was a well-oiled machine, fueled by industrialization, rigorous training, and a deeply ingrained sense of military hierarchy. Soldiers were drilled from the day they joined, learning to march in formation, handle their weapons with precision, and follow orders without hesitation. The German General Staff had planned for a rapid, decisive war, a blitzkrieg of movement and strategy that would secure victory before the war could drag into prolonged stagnation. But that was before the reality of trench warfare had set in, before the Western Front had become a static, unyielding line stretching for hundreds of miles, and before soldiers discovered that survival often depended more on luck and endurance than on tactics or skill. You step into the trench and immediately notice the smell, an overwhelming stench of wet earth, mud, decay, and human waste. The trenches are narrow, barely wide enough for two men to pass, and in some places the walls are collapsing under the constant pressure of rain and artillery. Wooden planks line the bottom in some areas, but often they are submerged in cold, murky water. Rats, bold and aggressive, scurry along the edges, some as large as cats, feeding on discarded rations, the bodies of animals or the unfortunate soldiers who have succumbed to disease or battle. The sounds are constant, an unending symphony of distant artillery, machine gun fire, the occasional crack of rifle fire, and the muffled screams and shouts of men in the line ahead or behind you. Silence is rare and fleeting. The war seems to have claimed it entirely. Your first days are a blur of exhaustion and confusion. The initial excitement or patriotic fervor that brought you to enlist, or that made you accept conscription without question, is quickly replaced by the grim reality of survival. The officers move efficiently along the trench lines, shouting orders, inspecting positions and enforcing discipline, while the soldiers around you perform routine tasks. Repairing sandbag walls, clearing mud, burying the dead, or standing watch in freezing temperatures. There is little time to rest. The cycles of artillery bombardment can continue day and night, often without warning. Sleep is broken, sporadic and unsafe. A moment's inattention could mean being caught in shell fire, or slipping into the icy water that fills much of the trench floor. The physical environment itself is a form of punishment. Cold seeps into your bones, rain soaks your uniform and gear, mud clings to your body, and in winter frostbite becomes a real and constant threat. Your hands are often numb, making it difficult to hold a rifle or perform simple tasks, and your boots, if they are anything like those issued to many soldiers, are inadequate for prolonged exposure to wet and freezing conditions. Many soldiers develop trench foot, a condition caused by prolonged exposure to damp, unsanitary and cold conditions, which can lead to gangrene and the loss of toes or feet if untreated. Disease spreads easily in such conditions. Lice infestations are unavoidable, spreading itch and irritation throughout the body, and dysentery is common, a combination of poor sanitation, contaminated water, and insufficient food. Rations are minimal, often just black bread, a small portion of sausage or meat, and some ersatz coffee. Fresh food is rare. Vegetables, fruits, and other nutrient-rich supplies are luxuries almost never seen in the frontline trenches. The meager meals are often cold, soggy, or infested with insects, yet they are a lifeline, providing the minimal sustenance needed to continue. Water, when it comes, is frequently contaminated and unsafe to drink, further increasing the likelihood of disease. Every day you learn to be resourceful, to find small ways to improve your situation, whether by collecting rainwater, sharing rations with a comrade, or finding shelter from the worst of the weather. But it is not only the physical environment that tests you. The psychological strain of trench life is relentless. You see friends and comrades fall to disease, artillery, or enemy fire. Sometimes their deaths are sudden, violent, and horrific. Other times they linger, suffering from injuries or illness, with no way to provide proper medical care. Letters from home offer comfort, a reminder of the world outside, yet they can also bring despair, as they remind you of loved ones and the life you may never see again. Soldiers cling to small forms of normalcy, exchanging letters, sharing stories, joking when possible, or playing cards during moments of relative safety. Humor becomes a shield against despair, camaraderie a weapon against loneliness. Even basic survival requires constant vigilance. Sentries must watch the trenches, alert for enemy movements, while patrols risk crossing no man's land, the exposed area between opposing trenches. This space is often a deadly expanse of barbed wire, shell craters, and debris, where a single misstep can lead to death. Snipers lurk in hidden positions, artillery shells land unpredictably, and chemical weapons like chlorine and mustard gas have begun to appear, adding an invisible terror to the already dangerous landscape. Each day you weigh every action, every movement, with life or death stakes, and yet routine continues. Despite the horror, the war becomes a rhythm, a pattern of survival that soldiers adapt to, a strange and terrifying normalcy. The camaraderie among soldiers is critical. Men of different regions, social classes, and backgrounds are forced to rely on each other for survival. Bonds form quickly, forged in shared danger, fear, and hardship. These friendships provide emotional support, a buffer against the constant stress, and sometimes a reason to keep going when hope seems distant. A shared cigarette, a whispered story, or a moment of laughter can break the monotony and fear, offering temporary relief from the overwhelming strain of trench life. Yet, these bonds are fragile, constantly threatened by death, injury, and the chaos of war. The war itself is incomprehensibly vast. You are a single cog in a massive machine of strategy, industry, and military planning. Decisions made by generals and politicians often seem distant, almost irrelevant, compared to the immediate struggle to stay alive in the mud and chaos of the trenches. Orders to advance, hold, or retreat are received with little context, and obeying them can mean facing almost certain death. Survival requires not just courage, but obedience, adaptability, and sometimes a measure of luck. The randomness of death is a constant companion. A shell can fall without warning, a sniper can strike with deadly precision, or a gas cloud can render months of training useless in seconds. Artillery bombardments dominate the landscape. The ground shakes, trees shatter, and the air is filled with smoke, dust, and the screams of men caught in the explosions. The sound is deafening, a relentless cacophony that can cause temporary or permanent hearing loss, disorientation, and panic. Even when not under direct fire, the anticipation of the next bombardment weighs heavily on the mind. Soldiers describe the experience as being inside a machine that seems to have no human purpose, where life and death hang by the thinnest of threads. As a German soldier, you also confront the enemy in closer quarters, facing attacks in the trenches themselves. Raids, night assaults, and hand-to-hand combat test every skill, every instinct. These moments are chaotic, terrifying, and intensely personal. Unlike the impersonal nature of artillery fire, close combat forces soldiers to confront mortality face to face, witnessing both the courage and the desperation of the enemy. It is here that training, discipline, and nerve are tested to their absolute limits. Amid all this, there is the shadow of nationalism and duty. Propaganda, cultural expectation, and societal pressure play a role in maintaining morale, convincing soldiers of the righteousness of their cause. Many cling to the hope that their sacrifice will contribute to the future of Germany, that their suffering has meaning. But as the months stretch into years, the romantic notions of war fade, replaced by a deep awareness of its senselessness, its indiscriminate cruelty, and the fragility of life. In the trenches, time seems distorted. Days blur into nights, weeks into months, and the war drags on endlessly. News of battles and campaigns comes slowly, often distorted or incomplete, leaving soldiers to focus on the immediate realities of survival. Letters, news sheets, and rumors are precious, glimpses of a world beyond the trenches, yet they rarely offer comfort. Instead, they reinforce the isolation, the distance from home, and the enormity of what soldiers endure every day. Despite the horrors, German soldiers develop coping mechanisms. Discipline, routine, humor, camaraderie, and resilience become survival tools. Soldiers learn to navigate the complex social dynamics of the trenches, to anticipate threats, to improvise solutions, and to maintain mental equilibrium in a world designed to break them. Small victories, like repairing a section of trench, securing a ration of food, or surviving a night without injury, take on outsized significance. They are reminders that survival is possible, even in the harshest conditions. Every step, every breath, every decision carries weight. The trenches of the Western Front are more than just a battlefield. They are a test of human endurance, a crucible where courage, fear, hope, and despair coexist in equal measure. As a young German soldier, you must navigate this environment with vigilance, skill, and resilience. You must endure not only the physical challenges of mud, cold, disease, and starvation, but also the psychological toll of constant danger, death, and uncertainty. Survival is never guaranteed, and yet, day after day, you find ways to continue, to adapt, to hope, and to endure. The trenches are a world unto themselves, a microcosm of the war, where human life is fragile and every action carries consequences. As you move through this world, you come to understand that survival is not simply a matter of skill or strength. It is a combination of courage, endurance, adaptability, and often, sheer luck. It is a lesson learned through hardship, loss, and perseverance, a lesson that every German soldier of the First World War came to know intimately, and one that continues to remind us of the true cost of war. Your day in the trenches begins long before sunrise. The gray, pre-dawn light barely penetrates the mist that hangs over the muddy expanse, and the cold cuts through even the thickest uniform. The shrill whistle of the non-commissioned officer pierces the morning fog, signaling the start of another day of survival, patrols, maintenance, or perhaps something far worse, a scheduled offensive that could mean death for many of your comrades. Even before your eyes are fully open, you are aware of the constant presence of danger. Artillery fire in the distance, the groan of collapsing trench walls, the faint whimpers or coughs of men nearby. The trench is alive in a terrifying and unnatural way, breathing fear and discomfort into every corner, and you have become part of its rhythm. The mud is everywhere. It clings to your boots, your uniform, your hands, and even your face. The trenches themselves are not the neat ditches shown in illustrations or propaganda posters. They are chaotic, constantly shifting with rain, artillery explosions, and the footsteps of thousands of men. Water collects in every depression, forming shallow pools that soak your boots and chill you to the bone. Sometimes, entire sections of trench collapse under the weight of water and mud, forcing soldiers to rebuild in freezing conditions. Wooden planks, sandbags, and scrap materials are your lifelines, yet they often fail under pressure, leaving you exposed to the elements and the constant threat of enemy fire. Hunger is a constant companion, gnawing at your stomach in ways that distract from the immediate dangers around you. Your rations are meager black bread, a small piece of sausage, sometimes a bit of cheese, and ersatz coffee that tastes bitter and metallic. Fresh vegetables, fruit, and proper meat are rare luxuries. Every meal is a careful rationing exercise. Soldiers often barter portions, share with comrades, or save a bit for later, knowing that food is not always guaranteed. The lack of proper nutrition weakens your body, making every day's tasks, climbing out of the trench, carrying supplies, standing guard, more difficult and exhausting. Disease spreads rapidly in the trenches. Lice infest almost every soldier, crawling into your clothing and hair, biting incessantly, leaving you scratching until your skin is raw. Trench foot, caused by prolonged exposure to cold, wet conditions, eats away at flesh and tissue. Soldiers with severe cases faced amputation if the infection set in. Dysentery and other intestinal diseases are common, fueled by contaminated water and inadequate sanitation. The trains, when available, are rudimentary, often nothing more than a hole in the mud or a wooden structure barely separated from the living area. The smell is pervasive, mixing with the stench of decay, sweat, and the remnants of past battles, creating an almost unbearable environment. The psychological strain is relentless. Each day you witness the suffering and death of those around you. Comrades you have laughed with, shared food and stories with, lie in the mud or are carried away on stretchers, their bodies broken by bullets, shrapnel, or disease. Some die instantly, others linger for hours or days, their pain echoing through the trenches. The screams, the moans, the coughing, and the occasional hysterical laughter of soldiers under extreme stress form a constant background to your existence. Letters from home are precious and terrifying at the same time. They remind you of the life you left behind, of family and friends who have no idea what you are enduring. Each word is a mix of comfort and guilt, a reminder of the world beyond the trenches, a world that feels impossibly distant. Sentry duty is a constant obligation, requiring vigilance and nerves of steel. Standing for hours in freezing temperatures, your eyes scanning the barren, shell-pocked landscape, you are acutely aware of the threat of snipers, enemy patrols, and sudden bombardments. Any lapse in attention could be fatal, and yet the monotony is just as draining as the danger. The hours drag on, filled with the sounds of distant artillery, the whispering wind, and the occasional whistle of a bullet passing too close. Soldiers often describe standing on sentry duty as an almost surreal experience, a combination of boredom, fear, and hyper-awareness. Patrolling no man's land is a different kind of terror. This narrow expanse between opposing trenches is littered with barbed wire, shell craters, and the remains of men and animals. Each step is measured and cautious. One misstep could mean instant death or severe injury. Patrols are carried out for reconnaissance, capturing prisoners, or disrupting the enemy, yet the risks are immense. Soldiers are acutely aware that they are exposed, that every sound and movement could betray them, and that survival often depends as much on luck as on skill. Encounters with enemy soldiers in this space are chaotic, violent, and intimate face-to-face confrontations where life and death are decided in seconds. Chemical warfare adds another layer of terror. Gas attacks, first introduced in World War I, are unpredictable and deadly. Chlorine, phosgene, and mustard gas float invisibly over the landscape, sometimes creeping into the trenches themselves. Gas masks are issued, but they are cumbersome, uncomfortable, and not always effective. The first time a soldier encounters a gas attack, panic is immediate. The smell is acrid, the eyes burn, and breathing becomes a desperate struggle. Those unprepared or too slow to don their masks can suffer agonizing injuries or death. The constant threat of gas adds a psychological burden, making even the moments of relative calm fraught with fear. Amid this chaos, soldiers develop coping mechanisms. Humor becomes essential. Jokes, songs, and stories provide a brief escape from the horrors around you. Camaraderie is a lifeline. Bonds are formed quickly, often stronger than those in civilian life, forged through shared danger, fear, and suffering. Soldiers watch over each other, sharing rations, helping each other through injuries or illness, and providing emotional support in ways that are subtle but deeply significant. These connections are sometimes the difference between enduring another day and succumbing to despair. The relentless sound of artillery is a constant companion. Shells explode with terrifying force, shaking the earth and sending debris flying in every direction. Trees are shattered, craters pockmark the landscape, and the screams of the wounded mix with the roar of battle. Even when you are not directly in the line of fire, the anticipation of bombardment is exhausting. Soldiers speak of the fear of waiting for the next shell, a tension that gnaws at the mind and body, leaving you alert and anxious even when nothing is happening. Every task in the trench, no matter how mundane it may seem, carries weight. Repairing sandbags, reinforcing walls, or carrying supplies is a physical and mental challenge, performed under conditions of constant stress. Each action could be interrupted by enemy fire, collapsing trenches, or the unpredictable behavior of other soldiers under pressure. Survival requires vigilance, adaptability, and an awareness of the ever-present dangers, a combination of skills that go far beyond the simple mechanics of fighting. Sleep, when it comes, is fleeting and fragmented. Soldiers may find a brief respite in small dugouts or behind makeshift barriers, but the noise, discomfort, and constant threat of death make restful sleep nearly impossible. Exhaustion compounds every day, weakening both body and mind. Soldiers develop strategies to cope, napping whenever possible, sharing shifts, or relying on comrades to watch over them, but the strain is cumulative, wearing down even the strongest individuals. The mental toll of trench life is profound. Shell shock, an early recognition of the psychological impact of prolonged combat exposure, affects many soldiers. Symptoms include tremors, anxiety, nightmares, and a detachment from reality. For young soldiers experiencing the horrors of battle for the first time, these effects are particularly acute. Coping with trauma is an ongoing challenge, often requiring reliance on comrades, small routines, or personal rituals to maintain a sense of control. Despite these hardships, moments of human resilience and adaptability shine through. Soldiers find ways to improve their situation, whether by collecting extra rations, reinforcing their positions, or creating small comforts within the trenches. Letters, photographs, and small personal belongings offer reminders of home and hope. Music, singing, or storytelling can momentarily lift spirits, creating a sense of normalcy amidst chaos. These acts of defiance, small though they may be, are crucial for maintaining morale and a sense of self in an environment designed to strip both away. The social dynamics of the trenches are complex. Soldiers come from diverse backgrounds, regions, and social classes, yet they are forced to coexist, cooperate, and survive together. Hierarchy is strict, with officers and NCOs enforcing discipline, yet camaraderie among equals is essential for psychological and practical survival. Conflicts arise, but they are tempered by shared danger and the recognition that mutual support increases the chances of survival. Trust, loyalty, and shared experience become the currency of life in the trenches. Every day, survival is uncertain. Decisions are weighed carefully, movements are calculated, and every action is infused with the knowledge that death or injury could be just a step away. Artillery, snipers, patrols, disease, and exposure create a relentless landscape of threats. Yet, soldiers endure. They develop routines, rely on training, and cultivate mental resilience to navigate this environment. Life becomes a constant negotiation with danger, a balancing act between fear and necessity, and a testament to human endurance under extreme conditions. Even the smallest moments of relief, finding a dry spot, sharing a meal with a comrade, or hearing news from the home front, carry profound significance. They are reminders that life continues, that hope persists, and that survival is not impossible. These moments, however brief, sustain soldiers through months of hardship, providing the emotional and psychological support needed to endure the relentless grind of trench life. Time in the trenches loses its normal meaning. Days and nights blur, the seasons pass with little distinction, and the war becomes a timeless, unending ordeal. Soldiers mark time by rotations, bombardments, or letters from home, yet the rhythm of life is dictated by danger, duty, and survival. Awareness of the outside world is limited, and the war's scale and consequences can feel distant and abstract, even as the immediate threats are intensely real. In these conditions, a German soldier learns resilience, adaptability, and the importance of camaraderie. Every day is a test not just of physical endurance, but of mental and emotional strength. The trenches are a world unto themselves, a microcosm of the war, where survival is uncertain and life is fragile. Yet, despite the constant threat and the harshness of the environment, soldiers endure, adapt, and find ways to live within the impossible conditions imposed upon them. Combat on the Western Front is a nightmare unlike anything you could have imagined. As a German soldier in 1916, the word battle has taken on a new meaning that is not defined by glorious charges or clear victories, but by the grinding, relentless terror of survival under constant threat. Every day brings the possibility of death, and every step you take could be your last. The battlefield stretches endlessly, a scarred and broken landscape of mud, shell craters, shattered trees, and barbed wire. No man's land lies before you, a desolate expanse where movement is perilous, and each breath is measured against the knowledge that the enemy is out there, waiting, watching, and ready to strike. You wake to the shrill whistle signaling movement, orders, or an attack, your body sore from the previous day's exertions, your muscles stiff from cold and exhaustion. You tighten your uniform, strap on your helmet, and adjust your rifle, knowing that soon you may have to leave the relative safety of the trench and enter the killing ground beyond. Your heart pounds, not just from anticipation, but from the cumulative stress of weeks, months, or even years spent in trenches, where the line between life and death is razor thin. Your mind races through every possible danger: artillery fire, snipers, machine guns, gas, and the chaos of close combat. You remind yourself of the training drilled into you, the repeated lessons in marksmanship, movement, and discipline, but deep down, you know that nothing truly prepares a man for the first time he faces the enemy in battle. Artillery dominates the battlefield. The thunderous roar of shells firing, the ground shaking beneath your feet, and the deafening explosions as they strike are constant companions. Artillery is impersonal, indiscriminate, and terrifyingly effective. Entire sections of trenches can be obliterated in minutes, burying soldiers alive or wounding dozens at once. The concussive blasts can cause temporary or permanent hearing loss, disorientation, and a deep, lingering fear that never fully leaves you. You learn quickly to anticipate the patterns, to recognize the whistling descent of a shell, and to dive for cover, but even the best preparation cannot guarantee survival. The randomness of artillery makes every day a gamble, a reminder that control is an illusion in the chaos of modern warfare. Close combat is just as terrifying. Raids into enemy trenches, counterattacks, and sudden engagements force you into situations where training, reflex and luck all collide. The battle is no longer distant, it is immediate and personal. You see the fear and desperation in the eyes of the enemy, feel the rush of adrenaline as bullets whiz past, and confront the primal instinct to survive at all costs. Hand-to-hand combat is brutal, chaotic, and intimate. Knives, bayonets, rifles, and grenades are tools not just of strategy but of raw survival. Every movement, every strike, every decision could determine whether you live or die. The sounds are overwhelming, the clash of steel, the thud of bodies hitting the ground, the screams and curses of men fighting for their lives. Then there is the unseen horror, chemical warfare. For the first time in history, the battlefield is not just physical but toxic. Chlorine gas, first used by the Allies, and later more lethal agents like phosgene and mustard gas, create a new and unpredictable danger. The yellow-green clouds creep across no man's land, invisible until too late, suffocating lungs, blistering skin, and causing panic in the trenches. Gas masks, when available, offer some protection, but they are cumbersome, limiting vision, restricting breathing, and taking time to don correctly. Many soldiers are caught unprepared, overcome by the poison, unable to escape, and left writhing in agony. The psychological impact is as severe as the physical. The fear of gas attacks adds a constant, invisible pressure to every movement, every decision. The threat is everywhere, unpredictable and utterly terrifying. The battlefield is also a place of sensory overload. The smell of gunpowder, smoke, decaying flesh, and mud mixes into a thick, choking haze. You see the broken landscape littered with bodies, some barely recognizable, others clinging to life despite severe wounds. The cries of the wounded, the orders shouted by officers, and the distant rumble of artillery create a relentless cacophony that overwhelms the senses. Time becomes distorted, moments stretch into eternities, and the line between fear, adrenaline, and exhaustion blurs. You learn to focus, to filter the chaos, but the tension is never far from the surface. No man's land is the ultimate test of courage and survival. Crossing it, whether for reconnaissance, raids, or offensive operations, is an act of calculated risk. The ground is scarred by craters, barbed wire stretches like a frozen snarl across the land, and every shadow could conceal an enemy soldier ready to shoot. Moving through this desolate expanse is a delicate dance, each step measured, each action deliberate. The knowledge that a single mistake can mean instant death or a maiming injury hangs over every soldier. Yet, orders demand movement, and duty compels action. Survival depends on skill, vigilance, and an almost unnatural calm under pressure. The psychological toll of combat is profound. You see comrades fall beside you, their blood mingling with mud, their screams echoing in your mind long after the battle ends. You may feel guilt for surviving when others do not, anxiety for the next engagement, or numbness as a protective shield against constant trauma. Shell shock, an early term for what we now understand as post-traumatic stress disorder, affects many soldiers. Symptoms include tremors, panic, nightmares, emotional withdrawal, and an inability to function. Young soldiers experiencing their first battles are particularly vulnerable, and even the most disciplined can find themselves breaking under the strain. Despite the overwhelming danger, soldiers adapt. Training, experience, and observation become critical tools for survival. You learn to read the battlefield, anticipate enemy movements, and make split-second decisions. You develop strategies for moving through trenches, taking cover during bombardments, and surviving gas attacks. These lessons are learned not in classrooms, but in the harshest of conditions, often at the cost of lives. Every successful action, every day survived, reinforces the importance of vigilance, discipline, and adaptability. Camaraderie plays an essential role in survival. Soldiers rely on each other for guidance, support, and protection. In the chaos of battle, a shared understanding can mean the difference between life and death. Men watch over their comrades, call out warnings, help carry the wounded, and offer encouragement in the most dire circumstances. Bonds forged in combat are intense and immediate, a mix of reliance, trust, and shared trauma. These relationships are fragile, however, constantly threatened by the randomness of death and injury that defines the battlefield. Combat also tests your morality and humanity. Facing the enemy, you see the fear and desperation mirrored in their eyes, recognize their struggle to survive, and sometimes wonder about the justification for the suffering inflicted. War forces choices that challenge values and instincts. Shooting an enemy soldier, navigating a wounded comrade, or witnessing civilian suffering all create internal conflicts that haunt men long after the battle has ended. Survival becomes not just a physical challenge, but a moral and emotional one as well. Artillery barrages are particularly terrifying because of their unpredictability and scale. Entire sections of the front line can be obliterated, transforming familiar terrain into a chaotic and deadly landscape. Soldiers must find cover wherever possible, sometimes ducking into shallow craters or reinforced dugouts, but even these protections are fragile. The ground shakes, debris flies, and the cries of the injured fill the air. The randomness of who lives and who dies can leave survivors shaken, guilt-ridden, and hyper-aware of every subsequent explosion. The use of new technology and tactics in World War I adds layers of complexity and danger. Machine guns with their rapid fire make open movement across no man's land nearly suicidal. Trenches are interconnected by complex networks of communication and support trenches. Yet navigating them under bombardment or during an offensive is fraught with risk. Mortars, grenades, and flamethrowers introduce terrifying new threats that test not just skill, but courage and psychological resilience. The battlefield is constantly evolving, and soldiers must adapt quickly to survive. Gas attacks are particularly insidious because of their invisible nature. Soldiers may not realize they are under attack until it is too late. The smell of chlorine is acrid, burning the lungs and eyes, while mustard gas causes painful blisters, blindness, and long-term respiratory damage. Panic spreads quickly. Some soldiers run without masks, worsening casualties, while others become disoriented, unable to navigate or assist comrades. The psychological impact is immense, knowing that danger can strike without warning, and that survival depends on both preparation and speed, adds an unending tension to every moment on the battlefield. Even moments of relative calm are deceptive. The aftermath of a battle is filled with dangers, unexploded ordnance, collapsed trenches, and wounded soldiers in need of assistance. Moving through these areas requires careful navigation and constant awareness. You see the devastation, the twisted metal, the shattered landscape, and the human toll of the fighting. Every step reminds you that the battlefield is unforgiving and that survival is a matter of both skill and luck. The human experience of combat is profound and multifaceted. Soldiers face not just physical threats, but the emotional and psychological weight of witnessing death, suffering, and destruction on an unimaginable scale. Coping mechanisms vary: humor, camaraderie, discipline, religious faith, or sheer determination. Soldiers rely on these strategies to maintain their sanity and continue functioning amidst the chaos. The bonds formed in combat, the small moments of levity, and the routines established to cope with danger are all part of the intricate tapestry of survival on the Western Front. Artillery, gas, machine guns, and hand-to-hand combat define the daily reality of a German soldier. Each threat is relentless, unpredictable, and terrifying. Survival requires a combination of physical endurance, mental resilience, tactical awareness, and an almost instinctive understanding of the environment. Every day spent in combat is a test, every moment a challenge, and every action carries weight. The battlefield is not just a place of conflict, it is a crucible of human endurance, where courage, fear, and desperation exist in constant tension. Life in the trenches is relentless, unforgiving, and harsh, yet amid the chaos, discipline becomes one of the few anchors keeping German soldiers alive. The structure and hierarchy imposed by the army are not mere formalities, they are survival tools. Every day, orders are given and followed, not out of blind obedience alone, but because they can mean the difference between life and death. Soldiers learn to move in sync, to respond quickly to commands, and to trust in the system even when it feels overwhelming. Officers and non-commissioned officers patrol the lines constantly, ensuring that the rules are followed, equipment is maintained, and defensive positions are reinforced. There is no room for hesitation. In a world where a moment's distraction can be fatal, discipline is not just expected, it is essential. The routines imposed by this discipline create a rhythm in a world otherwise ruled by chaos. Soldiers awaken to whistles, complete inspections of weapons and uniforms, and march in formation, even when the mud and water of the trenches make every step a struggle. Routines extend to chores, repairing sandbags, reinforcing parapets, cleaning rifles, and organizing supplies. While these tasks may seem menial, they are the backbone of survival. A neglected sandbag can collapse under the weight of rain or artillery, leaving the trench vulnerable. A poorly maintained rifle can jam at a critical moment, potentially costing lives. Soldiers internalize the importance of these tasks, understanding that the small details are just as vital as courage on the battlefield. Camaraderie is another cornerstone of life in the trenches. Soldiers rely on each other not just for survival, but for the mental and emotional strength necessary to endure the horrors surrounding them. In a trench filled with mud, lice, disease, and the constant threat of death, human connection becomes a lifeline. Shared experiences, whether standing guard in the freezing rain, carrying supplies under fire, or witnessing a comrade's injury, create bonds that are intense and immediate. These relationships go beyond friendship. They are based on trust, loyalty, and a mutual understanding that each man depends on the others for survival. A soldier might risk his own life to save a comrade, not out of heroism alone, but because the trust that binds them ensures that someone will do the same for him when the time comes. Small moments of levity and humor are essential to maintaining morale. Soldiers share jokes, tell stories, sing songs, or play games whenever possible. These brief respites are more than mere distractions. They are a coping mechanism, a way to assert some control over a world dominated by chaos. A shared cigarette, a whispered joke, or an improvised card game can lift spirits and provide a sense of normalcy, however fleeting. In these moments, soldiers are not just fighting a war, they are asserting their humanity, reminding themselves that they are still human beings, not just cogs in a vast military machine. Recognition and small victories provide another source of hope. In an environment where survival itself is an achievement, any success, no matter how minor, carries enormous significance. Completing a dangerous patrol without injury, repairing a section of trench that had been destroyed by artillery, or capturing an enemy position can boost morale and reinforce a soldier's sense of purpose. Decorations such as the Iron Cross are not just symbols of honor, they are tangible acknowledgments that courage and effort are recognized. These awards carry weight, motivating soldiers to endure further hardships and reminding them that bravery is noticed even amidst the overwhelming scale of war. Routines also provide a sense of security and predictability. In a world where explosions and gunfire are constant, knowing when to stand guard, when to eat, and when to rest creates structure. Soldiers cling to these small routines as a way to maintain sanity. Even simple tasks like cleaning a rifle or organizing supplies are comforting, offering a sense of agency in an environment where so much is beyond control. These routines, repeated daily, establish a rhythm that soldiers can rely on, a fragile but vital thread connecting them to a semblance of order and normalcy. Training plays a crucial role in both discipline and camaraderie. Soldiers are drilled not just to handle weapons or follow orders, but to move as a coordinated unit. Understanding the strategies, the structure, and the tactics of the army allows soldiers to operate effectively even under extreme stress. Coordination and teamwork can mean the difference between life and death in battle. A soldier who hesitates, panics, or acts independently without understanding the plan can endanger himself and everyone around him. Discipline, therefore, is both a personal responsibility and a collective necessity, reinforcing the bonds among men and ensuring that survival depends on the cooperation of all. Camaraderie also extends to sharing resources and knowledge. Soldiers exchange tips for coping with trench conditions, such as how to keep boots dry, treat minor injuries, or prepare rations. Older, more experienced men guide the younger recruits, passing on lessons learned through trial and error. These informal mentoring relationships help preserve life and improve the efficiency of the unit. Knowledge is survival, and the ability to rely on others for guidance, advice, and protection is a critical component of enduring the hardships of trench life. The emotional bonds among soldiers are reinforced by shared vulnerability. Everyone is exposed to the same dangers: artillery, gunfire, gas, disease, and the harsh environment. Fear is universal, but shared fear can create intimacy. When soldiers huddle together during bombardments or help each other carry wounded comrades, they form connections forged in adversity. These bonds can outlast the war itself, though many are tragically cut short by the indiscriminate violence surrounding them. The friendships and alliances formed in the trenches are among the most intense human experiences a person can endure, born of necessity and survival instinct. Even in the darkest moments, small victories matter. Maintaining a section of trench under enemy fire, successfully completing a reconnaissance mission, or surviving a particularly violent bombardment are achievements celebrated quietly among comrades. These moments serve as proof that survival is possible, that effort and skill can make a difference. Soldiers take pride in their accomplishments, no matter how small, because each one reinforces the possibility of continuing to endure the war. Life in the trenches is measured not only in days survived, but in these minor triumphs, each one a defiance of the chaos surrounding them. Discipline also manifests in the mental and emotional realm. Soldiers learn to suppress panic, to control fear, and to focus on immediate tasks. Training and routine help to compartmentalize experiences, allowing men to function even under extreme stress. Coping strategies include humor, camaraderie, meditation, or religious faith. Each man develops a personal method to maintain mental stability. In an environment where uncontrolled emotion can lead to mistakes or even death, self-discipline is both protective and empowering. Leadership plays a vital role in maintaining discipline and morale. Officers and non-commissioned officers are responsible not only for tactical decisions, but for sustaining the mental and emotional resilience of the men under their command. Clear communication, visible courage, and fairness can inspire soldiers to act decisively even under fire. Conversely, poor leadership can erode trust, increase fear, and result in unnecessary casualties. The quality of leadership directly impacts the effectiveness and survival of the unit, reinforcing the interconnectedness of discipline, camaraderie, and shared responsibility. Camaraderie is often expressed through rituals and traditions unique to the trenches. Soldiers develop their own codes of conduct, nicknames, songs, and routines that create a sense of identity and belonging. These small cultural markers provide comfort and stability, helping men to assert individuality within a rigid military structure. They also foster cohesion, as shared rituals reinforce bonds and mutual understanding. Even amidst the horrors of war, these social constructs remind soldiers of the human connections that endure beyond fear and suffering. Survival requires both individual skill and collective effort. Soldiers must be alert, capable, and adaptable, but they also rely on the men around them. Tasks are often performed in pairs or groups, whether hauling supplies, manning a machine gun, or repairing trenches. Coordination ensures efficiency and safety, while cooperation fosters trust and mutual dependence. A soldier's fate is intertwined with that of his comrades, creating a dynamic where individual survival is inseparable from collective effort. Small victories also offer psychological relief from the overwhelming stress of trench life. Completing repairs on a section of the trench damaged by artillery, sharing a rare supply of food, or successfully navigating a dangerous patrol through no man's land are all moments that restore a sense of control and accomplishment. These achievements, however minor they may appear, serve as reminders that action and resilience matter, that even in an environment dominated by chaos, human effort can shape outcomes. Even the smallest routines reinforce discipline and camaraderie. Soldiers establish personal habits, from organizing equipment to writing letters, which provide a sense of normalcy. Shared rituals such as morning inspections or evening roll calls reinforce the cohesion of the unit. These routines create predictability in an otherwise unpredictable world, allowing men to focus on immediate survival while maintaining a connection to structure and order. Camaraderie extends to emotional support. Soldiers console one another, share memories from home, and offer encouragement during moments of fear or doubt. Even small gestures, a pat on the shoulder, a word of reassurance, or offering a portion of rations can carry enormous significance. These expressions of solidarity strengthen morale, reduce stress, and reinforce the sense of shared purpose essential for enduring the horrors of war. Discipline, camaraderie, and small victories combine to form a network of survival strategies that allow German soldiers to function in the trenches. Each element supports the others. Discipline ensures order and efficiency, camaraderie provides emotional and practical support, and small victories reinforce hope and agency. Together, they create a framework that allows men to endure conditions that would otherwise overwhelm them, providing both structure and motivation to survive. Even amidst death, disease, and destruction, these elements offer a sense of purpose and connection. Soldiers learn to navigate extreme adversity by relying on training, relationships, and personal resilience. They celebrate achievements, however minor, and draw strength from the bonds formed in shared hardship. Life in the trenches is defined not only by suffering, but by the extraordinary capacity for human endurance, cooperation, and adaptation. Survival in the trenches during World War I was never guaranteed. For a German soldier, every day was a delicate balance between endurance, skill, luck, and the mercy of forces entirely beyond his control. Statistics alone paint a grim picture. Millions of men marched to the front, but only a fraction returned unscathed. Casualty rates were staggering, and death could come from artillery, snipers, disease, starvation, or sheer exposure to the elements. Survival was rarely determined by bravery alone. A soldier could perform every act of courage perfectly, yet still fall victim to a random shell or a sudden gas attack. Each man learned quickly that luck, timing, and the ability to adapt often mattered as much as skill or training. The odds were influenced by numerous factors: many of which were entirely beyond a soldier's influence. The location of deployment was critical. Some sectors of the Western Front were relatively quiet, while others were sites of relentless combat, shelling, and raids. A soldier stationed in the latter might face near constant danger, while another in a quieter sector could experience long periods of monotony, punctuated by bursts of terror. Even within a single trench, survival could vary drastically. A man's precise position during an artillery strike, the stability of the sandbags protecting him, or the behavior of the men around him could determine whether he lived or died. Randomness became an intrinsic part of daily life. Soldiers referred to it grimly as the luck of the trenches. Physical endurance was another essential component of survival. Soldiers were constantly exposed to extreme weather, freezing rain, snow, mud, and heat, depending on the season. The body was under constant strain, weakened by insufficient nutrition, poor sleep, and disease. Trench foot, caused by prolonged exposure to wet conditions, could lead to gangrene and the loss of toes or feet. Dysentery, influenza, and other illnesses spread rapidly in the crowded, unsanitary conditions of the trenches. Soldiers who survived the initial exposure often found themselves battling these conditions alongside the dangers of the battlefield. The ability to withstand physical hardship, to move efficiently despite exhaustion and injury, was a critical determinant of survival. Mental resilience was equally important. The psychological toll of life in the trenches cannot be overstated. Soldiers witnessed death constantly, experienced the terror of artillery and gas attacks, and lived under the omnipresent fear of enemy fire. Anxiety, depression, and shell shock affected countless men. The mental strain could be as deadly as any bullet, eroding the will to fight or even the desire to survive. Those who survived often relied on camaraderie, routines, and coping mechanisms, humor, song, prayer, or small acts of defiance to maintain their sanity. Each soldier developed personal strategies to endure, balancing fear with determination, despair with hope, and exhaustion with vigilance. Adaptability was essential. Conditions in the trenches were unpredictable, from sudden floods and collapsing walls to surprise attacks and chemical weapons. Soldiers who survived were often those who could think quickly, react effectively, and improvise solutions. This could mean finding new ways to reinforce a trench, moving wounded comrades to safety, or adapting tactics during an unexpected engagement. Flexibility and quick decision-making often distinguished those who lived from those who fell. Experience, too, became a survival tool. Men learned from their own mistakes and from observing others, internalizing lessons that could mean the difference between life and death. The unpredictability of battle meant that soldiers were constantly calculating risks. Every movement, every action, was a decision fraught with potential consequences. Crossing no man's land, even for reconnaissance or supply missions, was perilous. The terrain was a broken, cratered landscape, filled with barbed wire and the remnants of previous battles. Snipers, artillery, and machine guns could strike with little warning. Even a simple task, fetching water, repairing a section of trench, or carrying messages, required careful planning, cooperation, and an awareness of the constant threat surrounding them. Survival depended not only on individual skill, but on coordination and the support of comrades. Chance played an undeniable role in survival. Soldiers quickly learned that even the most careful, disciplined, and courageous individuals could fall due to randomness. A shell landing a few feet away, a misstep on unstable ground, or a gas cloud drifting unpredictably into a trench. These instances were devastating, as they underscored the fragility of life in a war dominated by forces beyond human control. The knowledge that luck could determine survival created a mixture of fear, fatalism, and hypervigilance, shaping the mental and emotional state of soldiers in profound ways. The ability to form and maintain social bonds directly impacted survival. Comradeship was more than emotional support, it was a practical survival tool. Soldiers watched each other's backs, shared resources, and warned one another of danger. In the chaos of battle, knowing that someone was there to assist, to pull you from a shell crater, or to provide covering fire could mean the difference between life and death. Men relied on each other not just for strength and courage, but for the practical realities of staying alive in a hostile environment. The concept of small victories was central to maintaining hope and morale. Surviving a night without casualties, successfully defending a section of trench, or completing a dangerous patrol were not merely tactical successes, they were essential psychological victories. These moments reinforced the belief that survival was possible and that actions, no matter how small, mattered. In an environment dominated by chaos, these achievements provided a sense of agency, a reminder that soldiers could influence outcomes through skill, courage, and cooperation. Equipment and resources also influenced survival odds. Properly maintained rifles, reliable boots, gas masks, and sturdy clothing could make a crucial difference. Soldiers learned to improvise, repairing weapons, reinforcing sandbags, or finding ways to keep warm and dry. Resourcefulness often determined whether a man could endure a harsh winter, survive an artillery bombardment, or escape the effects of disease. Those who were adaptable, observant, and inventive were more likely to survive the relentless challenges of trench life. Even small differences in behavior could mean life or death. Soldiers who remained alert, maintained focus during bombardments, and followed orders precisely were far more likely to survive than those who panicked or became careless. Discipline, training, and attention to detail became life-saving skills. Every decision when to move, where to stand, how to position oneself carried consequences. The constant awareness of risk honed instincts, sharpened reflexes, and made vigilance an essential part of daily existence. The psychological burden of survival extended beyond fear of immediate danger. Soldiers lived with the knowledge that every action, every failure to act, could endanger not only themselves, but their comrades. Decisions were made in split seconds, often with incomplete information, and the outcomes were permanent. The moral weight of these choices added another layer of stress, as men struggled with guilt, fear, and responsibility, even as they fought to endure. The interplay between physical survival and psychological resilience became a defining feature of life in the trenches. Despite the odds, German soldiers developed routines and strategies to increase their chances of survival. Observation posts, reinforced dugouts, coordinated movements, and collective defense strategies all contributed to protecting lives. Soldiers learned to read the battlefield, anticipate artillery patterns, identify threats, and exploit the terrain. Experience and observation became invaluable tools, allowing men to navigate the dangers of combat with increasing skill and awareness. Luck remained an inescapable factor. A soldier could be cautious, disciplined, and skilled, yet a single random event, a stray shell, a hidden sniper, a gas leak could end his life. The randomness of survival fostered a mixture of fear, fatalism, and determination. Soldiers coped by focusing on what they could control, relying on routines, camaraderie, and tactical skill to maximize their chances of enduring the unpredictable dangers surrounding them. Over time, survival became both a physical and psychological battle. Soldiers had to conserve energy, protect themselves from disease, maintain mental clarity, and remain alert to danger at all times. The trench was a place where every action had significance, and every decision could influence outcomes in ways that were sometimes subtle, sometimes immediate. Survival depended on a combination of endurance, skill, vigilance, and the support of those around you. The odds of survival also varied depending on the nature of military operations. Offensive assaults were notoriously deadly, as soldiers advanced across open ground under heavy fire. Defensive positions, while slightly safer, still carried constant risk from bombardment and raids. Patrolling, reconnaissance, and logistical duties introduced further hazards. Each type of task required different strategies, mental preparation, and risk assessment. Soldiers learned to adjust their behavior, using observation, intuition, and collective knowledge to navigate the dangers specific to each situation. The harsh reality was that death and injury were omnipresent. Every day, soldiers witnessed the fragility of life. Comrades struck down instantly, men maimed by shrapnel, or those succumbing to disease and exposure. The unpredictability of mortality reinforced the importance of vigilance, adaptability, and psychological resilience. Each soldier's focus was sharpened by the knowledge that survival was never guaranteed, and that every moment demanded careful attention, courage, and resourcefulness. In addition to external threats, internal factors shaped survival. Morale, mental state, and the ability to cope with fear had tangible effects on performance and endurance. Soldiers who maintained hope, nurtured camaraderie, and found ways to assert agency were better equipped to withstand the rigors of trench life. Conversely, those overwhelmed by despair, fatigue, or panic were more vulnerable, highlighting the profound link between mental fortitude and physical survival. Ultimately, survival in the trenches was a complex interplay of factors. Discipline, adaptability, resourcefulness, psychological resilience, camaraderie, skill, and luck all contributed to a soldier's ability to endure. Each day presented new dangers, new decisions, and new challenges. Men who survived were those who learned to navigate this intricate web of risks, balancing fear with courage, caution with action, and despair with hope. Survival was never guaranteed, yet for those who endured, it became a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. As the war drags on, the reality of its human cost becomes impossible to ignore. For a German soldier, survival is never the only measure of experience. The mental, emotional, and spiritual weight of the conflict accumulates relentlessly. You begin to notice not only the scars on the landscape, but the scars on yourself and your comrades. Every battle leaves behind more than shattered earth. It leaves grief, guilt, trauma, and a profound understanding of mortality. Even when the guns fall silent for a few hours or days, the echoes of death, suffering, and despair remain vivid in the trenches and in the minds of those who have endured. The war shapes who you are, often in ways that you cannot yet understand, and it imposes lessons that are learned at a cost too high to measure. One of the most immediate human costs is the loss of comrades. Friends who shared rations, letters from home, jokes in the mud, and whispered conversations in the dead of night are suddenly gone. Men you trusted with your life, relied upon for support, and shared moments of levity with can vanish in the span of seconds, taken by artillery, bullets, disease, or gas. Each loss is a shock, a reminder of the fragility of life, and a stark confrontation with mortality. You learn to endure grief, to suppress despair, and to continue functioning even as you feel the absence of those who stood beside you. The bonds of camaraderie that make life in the trenches bearable are also the source of profound pain when death strikes. The experience of witnessing suffering leaves deep emotional imprints. Soldiers see injuries, mutilations, and deaths that are impossible to forget. Some wounds are instantaneous and mercifully brief, but others linger, marked by agony and desperation. Men scream, moan, and writhe as the life drains from them. The stench of blood and decay permeates the air. The images are seared into memory, and even after a battle ends, the echoes remain, haunting sleep and waking thought. Many soldiers carry these images for the rest of their lives, unable to erase the scenes of horror they were forced to witness. Psychological trauma is compounded by the relentless tension and unpredictability of life on the front lines. The ever-present threat of death, combined with long periods of monotony, creates a mental strain unlike anything experienced in civilian life. Soldiers experience heightened anxiety, hypervigilance, nightmares, and emotional numbness. Shell Shokan early recognition of combat-related psychological trauma affects countless men, manifesting in tremors, panic, inability to concentrate, and emotional withdrawal. The mind adapts to survive, sometimes in ways that persist long after the physical danger has passed, leaving lasting scars on memory, perception, and emotion. The war also exacts a toll on the body. Disease, injury, malnutrition, and exhaustion weaken the soldier. Trenchfoot, infections, dysentery, influenza, and exposure to extreme weather are constant threats. Even minor injuries can become life-threatening if left untreated, and medical care is limited, improvised, and often overwhelmed by the scale of need. Soldiers learn to tolerate pain, to function despite injury, and to improvise remedies in the absence of proper treatment. Yet the cumulative effect of these physical stresses is profound, leaving many men permanently weakened or disfigured, their bodies bearing testimony to the trials endured. Amid the physical and psychological suffering, soldiers confront moral and ethical dilemmas that weigh heavily on their conscience. The act of killing, even in the context of war, leaves an indelible mark. Soldiers witness the fear, desperation, and humanity of the enemy, often realizing that those they fight are men like themselves, caught in the same machinery of war. Decisions made in the heat of battle, whether to shoot, to assist the wounded, or to abandon a comrade in danger, carry moral weight. The guilt, shame, or haunting memories that arise from these decisions are a profound component of the human cost of the war. Families and communities are another silent victim of the conflict. Soldiers think of loved ones back home, wondering if they will ever see them again, if they will receive news of their survival, or if letters will be their final communication. Families endure anxiety, grief, and uncertainty, living in a constant state of tension. Soldiers' absences reshape the social and economic fabric of towns and villages, leaving gaps in labor, emotional support, and social cohesion. The impact of a single soldier's experience ripples outward, touching countless lives beyond the front lines. The landscape itself is a silent witness to human suffering. Fields once fertile are reduced to mud, craters, and barbed wire. Forests are shattered, villages destroyed, and entire regions scarred by artillery and fire. The destruction is not only physical but symbolic, representing the profound disruption of life, culture, and stability. Soldiers moving through this landscape carry the weight of its devastation, realizing that survival comes at the cost of beauty, home, and a sense of continuity with the world they left behind. Small victories, survival, and camaraderie provide moments of relief, Yet these are often overshadowed by the scale of loss. A patrol completed without casualties or a trench reinforced successfully may offer temporary pride or satisfaction, but they cannot erase the larger picture of suffering. Soldiers learn to celebrate these fleeting successes as a means of sustaining hope, yet they are acutely aware that each day brings new dangers, new losses, and the ongoing reality of war. The juxtaposition of fleeting triumph and pervasive suffering becomes a defining feature of life on the front lines. Letters from home provide a fragile connection to life beyond the trenches, yet they are double-edged. They bring comfort, a reminder of loved ones and familiar routines, but they also highlight the gap between the front and the world left behind. Each letter is a bittersweet reminder of what is at stake and what may be lost. Soldiers cherish these connections, reading and rereading messages from family, friends, and loved ones, finding moments of solace in a world otherwise dominated by danger and despair. The passage of time is warped in the trenches. Days blend into nights, weeks into months, and the war seems to stretch endlessly. Soldiers lose track of normal rhythms, experiencing time not by clocks or calendars, but by rotations, bombardments, and patrols. The monotony punctuated by moments of terror shapes perception, making even brief periods of calm feel miraculous. Survival depends on mental resilience, the ability to endure tedium alongside fear, and the capacity to find meaning in small routines, relationships, and achievements. The human cost is also seen in the erosion of innocence and youth. Young soldiers enter the trenches with ideals, dreams, and a sense of purpose, only to find themselves hardened by the harsh realities of war. Childhood innocence is replaced by a pragmatic understanding of mortality, violence, and suffering. The experiences of battle, injury, and death shape personalities, leaving lasting impressions that endure long after the guns have fallen silent. A soldier who survives is transformed, carrying with him both the wisdom and the scars of his experiences. Medical care, when available, is a stark illustration of the human cost. Field hospitals are overwhelmed, resources are scarce, and the sheer number of wounded can make treatment chaotic and impersonal. Surgeons work under pressure, improvising when supplies run out, and soldiers are often left to endure pain while awaiting attention. Even successful medical interventions cannot erase the trauma, and many survivors face permanent disability or chronic pain. The limitations of care underscore the fragility of life and the extraordinary resilience required to endure. The environment itself compounds suffering. Mud, cold, and rain infiltrate every aspect of daily life, exacerbating disease, weakening the body, and creating a sense of unending discomfort. Trench conditions are harsh and degrading, with lice, rats, and vermin omnipresent. Soldiers adapt, finding ways to cope with filth, discomfort, and the constant reminder of mortality. Survival in such conditions is not just physical, but a continuous test of mental and emotional strength. Death is omnipresent and impersonal. Artillery, machine guns, snipers, disease, and accidents claim lives indiscriminately. Soldiers witness comrades dying in agonizing ways, often unable to intervene. The sheer scale of mortality creates a profound awareness of the fragility of life. Even those who survive battles are marked by the loss of friends, the injuries they carry, and the psychological burden of witnessing constant suffering. The human cost is measured not only in lives lost, but in the enduring scars borne by survivors. Moments of reflection are rare but powerful. Soldiers think about the world beyond the front lines, the families they have left behind, and the future that may never come. They reflect on the meaning of their sacrifices, the value of survival, and the cost of their experiences. These reflections are often tinged with sadness, guilt, and longing. The human cost of war is not only immediate but enduring, shaping perspectives, relationships, and personal identity in ways that extend far beyond the battlefield. Even amidst camaraderie, discipline, and small victories, the psychological burden remains. Survivors carry with them memories of death, suffering, and fear, often internalized in ways that shape personality, behavior, and mental health. The war teaches harsh lessons about vulnerability, mortality, and the limits of human endurance. It also teaches resilience, cooperation, and the capacity to find meaning amidst chaos. The human cost, therefore, is multifaceted, encompassing physical injury, psychological trauma, moral dilemmas, and enduring loss. Ultimately, the experience of surviving as a German soldier in World War I is a study in endurance and transformation. Men who emerge from the trenches do so profoundly changed, carrying both the scars and the lessons of their experiences. Survival is not simply a matter of avoiding death, it is a continuous negotiation with fear, danger, and loss. It involves mental and physical resilience, camaraderie, discipline, and adaptability. Those who survive are testaments to human endurance, but they also bear the weight of the immense human cost: friends lost, the injuries endured, the psychological toll, and the moral and emotional consequences of life in a world dominated by violence and suffering.